While we consider that, let's examine what scientists and philosophers say about free will. We'll start with Peter Ulrich C., a professor of cognitive neuroscience at Dartmouth College. He shares his definition.
Free will involves a world in which there are multiple possible futures which I can select. And in order to do that, I have to internally model those external possibilities. So I have to have a kind of realistic imagination. So free will is very much tied up with my ability to bias outcomes in the world through my own actions and for my own reasons, such that that future which is open in the world actually comes to pass.
So, the first part of that definition prompts a question about the world. Is the future predetermined in some way? Or are there different possibilities we might be able to influence? The second part prompts a question about ourselves. What kind of capacities do we need to have in order to exercise free will? Philosophers have debated these questions over millennia, including Greg Caruso, professor of philosophy and applied ethics at Fairfield University. He gives us an overview of the four current philosophical positions on this question.
I think the best way to understand at least the traditional version of the problem of free will, it's a question of how to reconcile free will with the thesis of what's called determinism. And determinism is the thesis that facts about the remote past in conjunction with the laws of nature entail as only one unique future. There's a position called libertarianism, not the political conception of libertarianism, but the metaphysical one, which says that if determinism is true, agents lack free will. But libertarians believe we do have free will. So they try to make sense of an indeterminate conception of free will where agents can have free will in a way that requires the falsity of determinism. There's another position called compatibilism, and it is what it kind of sounds like. It tries to make compatible these two different beliefs, the belief in free will and the belief in determinism. It says for an agent to be free and morally responsible, it doesn't have to be the case that determinism is false. It just has to be the case that agents act either voluntarily or with some form of what's called reasons responsiveness, their ability to respond to particular kinds of reasons for action.
Wow, that's quite a lot of different concepts for us to remember. I mean, I'm beginning to wish that we had the ability to show a Venn diagram in our audio podcast. So, before we move to our next definition, let's break it down a bit. You will all have to imagine the Venn diagram in your own minds. There are two crucial questions. First, free will. Is it true or false? And second, determinism. Is that true or false? We heard about the libertarians who say free will is true, determinism is false. We then heard about the compatibilists who say free will is true and determinism is true. So now we come to the penultimate category in our imaginary Venn diagram.
The hard determinist view was the view that determinism is true and incompatible with free will, either because it's incompatible with agents having the ability to do otherwise, or because determinism excludes agents being the appropriate source of their actions, since the ultimate source of actions drains back to these antecedent conditions like upbringing, genetics, prior experience, heredity, factors that are ultimately beyond the control of the agent.
Hence, proponents of that position say free will is false and determinism is true. Greg Caruso himself rejects free will, but unlike the hard determinists who we just heard about, he believes that the whole question of determinism is irrelevant to his position. He explains by introducing us to the very last category.
I'm what you would call a hard incompatibilist, which means whether determinism is true or indeterminism is true, we would still lack free will.
In other words, he is saying free will is false and determinism is irrelevant. And don't let the unfriendly sounding term hard incompatibilism fool you. Many of its proponents are, in fact, motivated by a concern for fairness. They start from a concept in philosophy called the basic desert. In its simplest boiled down form, it means that good actions should be rewarded and evil actions should be punished. But hard incompatibilists ask, once one has rejected free will, then how can there be justice in praising or blaming people for their actions? Because they deem actions to be beyond the individual's control.
And that's because agents are no more in control of determinate events than they would be in control of indeterminate events.